All right, when I finished the last recording, I still had an error inside my JavaScript. I wanted to show you what caused that trouble and how I resolved it because it wasn't easy. I looked through this and couldn't figure out when I ran this, saved it, backspace, refresh. When I ran it, it just went out and ran my page and submitted it. Come on. Now you're going to let me, oh, okay, submit. It kept running my page. I couldn't figure out why. This is going to happen a lot in JavaScript if you don't have the Firebug turned on. And Tim was asking before the break, what's the sequence of assignments? You got everything due, right? Everything's in this class. So let's set the Firebug lab due Wednesday, but I'll give you some time in class on Wednesday to work on it. Firebug allows you to debug, and I turned the Firebug on. And this is only works in Firefox. There are other debuggers, and some of the other Chrome has its own debugger, and so do the others. But the lab is for Firefox. This is the most thorough, I believe, most thorough debugger available for JavaScript. And so I hit the back button to go back here, and then I got this error message. I didn't see that initially because the Firebug or the browser never really got to it till I hit submit, and by then it was already off and going. It went to a different page and it blew my error message away. So I had to go back to see this error message. It says you're missing a parenthesis on this format line here, and way out here it expects parentheses, kind of what it's telling me. But it also tells me that I'm on line 19, so I can go back here and go to line 19. There it is, and sure enough, I'm in a right line command, so there's a parenthesis missing here. A couple of points here. First of all, Firebug, very valuable. Second one, very annoying. Whenever a JavaScript error occurs, all JavaScript processing is stopped for that page, and it loads. All JavaScript processing stops. So if you have buttons, and the buttons are supposed to respond to something, if there was an error in your on load, in your form load, if there was an error in there, JavaScript is basically turned off. In this class, if you got Firefox running without the Firebug going at the same time, at least when you're working on your homework, you're going to hate yourself. Because if there's an error in here, nothing's working. The little bug itself's got a 1 on it. I never see that one for some reason. It's just in the wrong corner of the screen for me to see it. If it's down here, I get to see it. It's also amazing to me if I leave this on and then go surf the web and other places, how many errors I see down here that are still in those pages. So Firebug, very important. I'll keep it around just in case here. I shouldn't have too many more errors, but who knows? We're just playing around here. Okay. So now that I've fixed it, did I save it? Nope. Now I can go back, run it again, refresh the page. Error goes away. That doesn't always mean anything, but now if I hit submit, I get my date formatted the way I asked for it. The other thing I did debugging wise is I said, I wonder if it was because I brought those two files in. Maybe I didn't space this right, and one of these not right will also cause a JavaScript error. If there's errors inside here and you call them, and there shouldn't be because these are my tools, they should be clean. That will stop the JavaScript processing. So the first thing I did is commented these out. Actually cut them. Saved it. Did it make any difference? No. So then I went down here and somebody said, wait a minute, don't you need to? And then I realized, whoops, now I'm trying to use format without importing it. So I went back, put that back. Taking out code, having a debugger, lots of different techniques to discover errors in JavaScript. It's not quite as easy as it is in C# because Notepad++ is not going to syntax highlight for you when you have syntax errors. That's what Firebug is for, tell you have syntax errors. And since the day you came into my classes, I've been harping about 5-6 lines of code, test it. 5-6 lines of code, test it, so that when it breaks, you have a pretty good idea where to go back to. Definitely applies here. The more code you add, the more likely you are to have errors, and it's very disconcerting to get hundreds of them down here. Okay, before we play around with dates too much more, and I will play with those a little bit more, I promise, I want to get a couple of more functions out of the way here. This one is handy for your homework assignment. And that's a prompt function, and it's basically a message box. But it actually not a message box, but an input box. We didn't mess with those too much in C#. This displays a box on the screen that asks the user to enter some information. And when it comes back, it gets stored in this variable. So they can enter one line of text or one value or whatever it is, it's text. Okay. If the user clicks cancel, the prompt returns null, which is, notice it's not nil. That's what we've been putting up with Swift is nil. Here it's null. If we get null, we can check for that later and we can process differently. If the user clicks the OK button without any text, we get the empty string. That's subtly different, isn't it? The empty string and null, two different things. Well, let's try a prompt when we push the button instead. So I'm going back to my code. And on submit, I'm going to comment out my date stuff here so that you can look at it later, or maybe I'll bring it back to life. And I'm going to create a variable called result and immediately assign that the value from the prompt. So just like in most languages, I can declare a variable and immediately set a value to it. And I can put a default value in there, or I can just leave it out. That's optional. So it's kind of like a placeholder. Underneath that, I can do a quick document write line. There is no way to embed strings into strings in this language. It's normal, unlike PHP and Swift, where you can embed stuff inside of string literals. Not happening here, so we have to concatenate. Now when I hit submit, it should prompt me. There we go. That's what it looks like. These have changed in Windows 8. If you run it at 7, they look more like dialog boxes. I refresh that. Oops, now it's back. Submit again, leave it blank. No problem. Submit again, hit cancel. I get a null. Notice it's not null. It's the characters N-U-L-L, which is really bizarre as well. In all other languages, it's a reserved word, right? Nil, null. Here it's the string, null. It might also be the reserved word null. I'm pretty sure it is the reserved word null as well, but when you concatenate the null to a string, you get the word null, which is kind of funky. Is not a number, we'll take a look at it a little bit here. Is not a number returns false for empty strings and null. So that's something to keep our eyes open for. If we want a yes-no type of confirmation, we get a dialog box with OK cancel buttons. We can do a confirm, so let's just do a quick look on that one. Yes and no. I click on OK, and I get true. Click on cancel and I get false. So not nil, but true and false is what we get here. So you could throw that result variable now in an if statement and say if result. Done. You don't have to say double equals true or anything like that, though you could. Process accordingly. True or false. Already saw the alert. Already saw a document write line. If you want to, you can put carriage returns \ends in there. And here's the big note that we saw before, that if you have a document write line that is issued after the page is loaded. Some people will put JavaScript in their code, in their HTML. That executes as the page is loading, and so the JavaScript executes, it does whatever it needs to do, and it gets included in the page. But in this case, the page is loaded, we hit the submit button, that JavaScript document write line executed after the page was loaded, so it basically creates a new page. The document write line command itself does that. All right, we spent a lot of time in Unit 6 talking about forms, and you created a form, and we have one here. What if I want to gather the information from that form? To get information out of an element on your form, you have to use the document class, which is built in. Document is known as a known feature, just like we had the window as a known feature in here. Here's a document. We're writing to the document, but we're also using the window class, if you will. It's built in. I have to ask the document, hey, get me a pointer, basically is what that says, to the element with this ID. So what this gives you is a pointer to the thing that you want. And all the stuff on the form, the input boxes, the radio buttons, the check boxes, the buttons themselves, the list boxes, the all those things are objects, and they have properties, and we can then go get their properties. This gets used, this gets done so much. Give me that, give me that, give me that, over and over and over again, all over the place. That instead of typing document get element by ID over and over and over again, what Murak recommends, and by the way, there's lots of pages in these notes referring back to Murak. The HTML, there wasn't much there, but now you want to see some of this, you need some book you got to read, maybe a few pictures. Murak is quick and dirty, here's how you do it, here's a quick example, now let's go on to something else. And here are the pages that cover all the stuff I've been talking about. So your book should become a feature of your life again here. Okay, element by ID, this was stolen from Murak. He probably stole it from somebody else. Okay. But what he creates is a function. And he gives it a name. In JavaScript, you can assign function names to variables, which is kind of bizarre. So this function's name is $, which is perfectly legal. Because remember, our variable names and function names start with letters or underscores or $signs. So he creates a function called just $, because he uses it so often. We use it so often. Creates a function called $. You send it the name, the ID name, the ID attribute of the object that you want, and this function returns the document get element by ID. So now whenever you want a pointer to something, you simply say $. Give me a pointer to the text box called text name. Nice and neat versus document.get element by ID. Much nice and neat. And so this is, remember, JavaScript, like all curly bracket languages, could care less about carriage returns. Here's the short version. Start it, end it, one line. It's probably already there. There it is. So it's okay, it's already there. Copy it, steal it, and from then on, whenever you need to reference an object on the form, simply use the $sign. So now, having said that, let's grab the information from this text box, which is probably called text name, but I better go look. It is an ID of text name. Now this is some old stuff, I can tell, because they got prefixes on the names, and I don't usually send prefixes with my data. So this is old. I will try to remember to update it so I look smarter next year. But this is an old example. I come up with different techniques that work better for me. By the time it gets to the server, that's where the name is used. By the time it gets to the server, it's no longer a text box. It's the text that was in the text box. So I don't like that prefix anymore. I'll try to remove them in my spare time. Okay, so this thing's called ID of text name. So if I want to get at it from up here, again, let's comment out some more code. We'll comment that out as well. If I want to get at something and process it, I can do that. I can say that I might create a variable called the name equals $txt name. That isn't good enough. $txt name is a pointer. It's a memory address. It's something similar to that. It's not something you can use directly. Another way to look at it is it's a pointer to the text box object. And I've been harping on my C# students for the last 2 weeks. You don't do things with objects. You don't do things with text boxes. You do things with the properties of the text boxes and the labels and the buttons and everything else. Same thing here. The most commonly used property for objects on a JavaScript on an HTML form is the value property. And there's lots of different ways I can skin this cat. Right, here I'm saying, give me a pointer to the text box and immediately give me its value. What type is that? Text. It's coming out of a text box. It's text. All right, so if we want to turn that into a number, it's a name right now. If we want to turn that into a number, we have to remember to convert it. We'll learn how here, maybe next time, maybe today. Yeah. And then I can once again do a document.writeLine. And concatenate the name. And remember my closing bracket this time, parentheses. Save that. And now I have to remember to type my name in here. It's not going into any dialog box anymore, and submit. And I forgot to reset my form. Now I got it. Remember, the document writeLine started after, so it starts a new page, and that's kind of nice here. We get to see the output. Another way I could have done that, I could have said, and I do this quite a bit, PTR name equals, and just stop here. Here's a pointer to the text box. And then later I can do all kinds of things like make it wider, make it narrower, change its font color, do all the stuff we did in C# if you want to do that while the program's running. But now down here I'd have to say PTR name.value. So the same thing we could do in VB. We could go right to the text box and say, give me your text, put it into a variable. We never did it with VB, C#. We never did it. But in C# you could also say this variable, which is of type text box, points to that text box, and then later on strip its text out. Here I tend to do it this way, because particularly if I need access to that text box more than once, I define a variable for it. So that should work. Or can do that. Give me a pointer to it, immediately give me its value, stuff that in there. This is also quite common. However, I'm going to ask it if you need to do this more than once, because this is really a little more complicated than it looks. Right? This says give me a pointer. Okay, first I got to go find out. Oh, there it is. Okay, give me a pointer to that. Then give me the value that's inside. Okay, I got it. Why not keep that pointer handy for later as a variable like I did it the first time? If you're only using it once, this is perfectly acceptable. But if you're referencing that object over and over and over again, then put the pointer or the value, depending on which one you're using over and over and over again, into a variable, and then use the variable from then on. Test that one real quick. Still seems to work. So let me document the other one here where we did my variable called PTR to name, and that's equal to that. Comment it out because I wasn't using it, but if you're going to use it more than once, use the variable versus repeating this over and over and over again. It should be a little faster. John?
Is get a reserved word in JavaScript, or could you use the word get instead of $sign to make it more readable?
You think it's more readable? I understand what you're saying. I don't think it's reserved. Not turning colors, so Notepad++ is telling me I don't recognize that as a reserved word. So all you have to do in that case is take out the $sign, put in the word get, and from then on you say, get me the text box. Or PTR. But this dollar thing, you'll see it all over the web.
Yeah.
You're first now seeing it, so that's why it's new, but it's so common. Yeah.
You beat me to it, but all the JavaScript that I've ever worked with or seen from, like the weather gurus that I work with, the $sign is, you'll see that.
You use that to get at that element name. So it's new to you, but it's not, and so it's a little cryptic. I agree. Why is it called a $sign? That's a dumb name. Because it's nice and short. We do it so often, we want it short. But
see it called too.
and it jumps out at you, right? Versus the get, which looks like some other function, maybe. But you can call it if you prefer something else. Go ahead.
Instead of having the prefix PTR, could you have a txt name or pointer variable?
You mean here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that make more sense instead of having everything a pointer?
If you had a TXT, it'd get confused with the other text boxes easier.
But you can't get to the text box easier. I mean, you can't get to the text box individually or separately. You can't just use, so, sure. It's the text box name dot value. Somebody's going to look real hard to figure out, wait a minute, how did you get to the text box, which has the ID name, text name? How did you get to that without first converting, and then they'll find, oh, you did convert it. Okay, I see.
Maybe that would be an instance where you would use get and call it get txt name. A little more readable.
Maybe. I'm not going to complain, but as Tim backed me up, thank you. Remind me to feed you later. No. As Tim backed me up, that $sign is used all over the place. The names of what you assign them to after that, if there's a consistency there, I haven't found it. I just like to put a PTR on it so that I remember it's a pointer. But TXT is the same thing. Right now it's a pointer to a text box. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Don't think. Maybe after I look at it a while, I go, eh. But right now it seems like that would be okay.
Well, and the thing to remember too, though, is like on weather projects, you have multiple programmers working together on JavaScript. Even, you kind of got, if everyone's using the dollar, then if you change it up, it's going to get confusing for someone else. So it's better to.
The answer to all those questions, can I use get? Can I change the names? Is what's the standard in your organization? Because if the standard is we're all using a $sign for get element by ID, then you should use a $sign for get element by ID, because the next person that comes along, maintains your program, is probably going to do a search and replace for get and change it to a $sign and hope that they don't get any extra ones.
I would say that at Sentry, if they use the $sign instead of the get element, they would have saved probably billions of characters of code.
Billions of characters of code.
Billions.
Billions, yeah. So they don't, I take it.
No.
Wow. So adjust here, do what you want. because you're your own company. But be ready when you get out in the real world for somebody to say, don't do that. And you'll go, but Volker's, don't ever use my name in vain after you graduate. Because remember, since programming logic beginning, all this is Volcker standards for you to get used to standards so that when somebody shoves them down your throat, you're not going, what do you mean I can't do whatever the heck I want? Right? Just so you get used to it. But my standard is by no means an international, there is no international standard. Every company is different. If Adam were here, he'd probably tell us something different about the HTML at Skyward. Okay. Probably send me an email after he listens to the recording now. So here's how we get the value of whatever that is. Most objects, particularly text type objects, have values. And we'll see more of the properties. They vary, obviously, with text boxes and check boxes and those kind of things. Different kinds of properties. But value, is more like the text property in C#. It's the most common one. We can also change it. Okay, so I could say here when the user clicks on the button, let's do something rude. And that's, well, if I do that, it's an on submit button. This isn't going to work. Because unless, oh, there's the return false. I'm sorry. The return false says, after you're done, don't submit. If I leave that out, then it would go sending it off to my website someplace. So I should be able to change, should be able to change the value in the text box when the user clicks the button. Okay. So that would be $txt_name.value equals you clicked the button. Because this returns false, it cancels the submit. Normally, on submit is just something you're doing on your way out. Maybe you're saving something to the database, or maybe you're leaving a message box for the user. We don't use on submit a lot. But what we do use it for is validation. The user said submit. Okay, hang on a second. Before you submit, go check out all the fields and make sure everything's cool before we leave. Because even with HTML5, they can skip fields and we'll never know. Or they can put bad values in and we might never know. Go back and check. And if everything's cool, then don't do anything special, just leave, submit. But if it's bad, then set return false, and it stays here. So this should change my text box. Uh-oh. You clicked. What's wrong with that?
Oh,
Text name. See? Saved me. Because how long would I look at this before I'd see that? Maybe because of the syntax highlighting. That parenthesis I left out over here, I could have looked at that for half a day. Paul's slipping. He'd usually catch that a lot earlier than that. Okay. Or at least tell me about it. So in here, we'll put in the Volcker Gall. Okay. And click the button. We didn't leave, but it changed my text. So you can set the text if you wish. Normally, what do we set it to? Empty string. To clear it out. Can do the same thing. Doesn't reset do that? Sort of. So we can set values, enter a number, and try to convert it. Okay, often we use text boxes to gather numbers. Even if the input field is a number field, I think it still returns text. It returns, I believe, text, even though it's number field. Because remember, the designation number only means make it look like this and bring up the right keypad for numbers if you're on a mobile device. And I think they're just text boxes that are fancy. Okay. So this is a good place to experiment a little bit. If we want to convert what's in the text box, we use parse float or parse int. And if you remember your C#, there it's int.parse and double.parse, and I think it was, and here it's parse int and parse float, and you know why your head starts. I think every language seems to turn these inside out on me. Very hard to keep these straight. So let's start experimenting by first of all changing my text input field for text name and change its type to a number. And then go grab it and display it, which I had just a minute ago. And then we grab the value. Now if I type in there, it shouldn't make a lot of difference. Now that it's a numeric field. It's Firefox. What happens in numeric fields if I try to put text in there? Fine. I leave. Ooh. Warning, warning. Could be a problem. Submit. Firefox says that's not a number. Cool. So, I'll give you a number. Click. Did I put a point in there?
No.
Doesn't like it because I didn't tell it to with the style. So we'll just go with the 7 and submit. And what we can't tell is what type of data is that. So let's try parsing it. No, that won't hurt any either, because it'll parse it just fine if it's a string. How do I know if it's a number? I don't think I need to know. I don't think I can know.
Try and do math with it.
Pardon me?
Try and do math with it.
It'll work. Converse it automatically. Say what John's response was, we'll do math with it. Well, remember that the variables here are not typed. So if I try to do math with a string, it'll try to convert it and go fine. So I'd have to somehow get a bad number in there before, and that's hard to do in Firefox now because the HTML5 is intercepted and goes, you said number, it's not a number. I wonder how smart Explorer is.
So would you really care if it's a number or text?
I don't. You're right. All right. Because the HTML5 is now intercepting it for me. I don't think I really care. Nice. Internet Explorer. Let me do that. Even better. What? It just wipes it. That's rude. 7. You happy now? Yes. How about 7.25? You happy now? Yes. Interesting. This is Explorer, I want to say 10. It might be 11. 11. Okay. So that was interesting. Wiped it out, didn't say a word. Let me take care of that for you. That's not good. Not good.
That's it, I'm getting rid of Internet Explorer.
Okay. And submit. And it must enter a valid value. You could really help me out a whole lot more than that. That's lovely. And I love the red box on submit, but not until then. So Internet Explorer 11 is helping us, not quite as friendly as the others, but it's helping us, saying that's not acceptable. Fix it.
How would you do decimal points?
I'd have to change the style of my input type and put in step 0.1, something like that. Isn't that how you did it? Is it style? Or just step equals? Pretty sure.
That'll make it be a double.
Yeah. Still can't prove that it's not a number. Because of the flexibility of JavaScript, what I'm trying to do is give it something bad to see if it's really text. But it doesn't matter, as somebody said, whether it's text or a number, because when you throw it into an equation, it works anyways. Okay. So now I can go in here, let's put in a 5, you know what, bump that up a little bit, there we go, and submit, and everything's cool. And we could even say the result is text.value times 5. Sounds absolutely ridiculous. Should work. Wow.
Magic.
Magic. So why would I parse anything? What if it's not a number? Parsing lets you validate that it really is a number. Now here the HTML5 has pretty much gotten in our way, plus we have said the input type is a number. So now all the browsers are going, excuse me, sir or madam, that is not a number. Fix it. Tim, can you rely on your users using HTML5?
Oh, absolutely not. That's why we need JavaScript.
That's why we need JavaScript. What happens if they're using if they're using IE8? I'm surprised IE11 caught the number thing here. I'm pleasantly surprised. I didn't like the way it did it, but I was pleasantly surprised that it caught it. If they're using 8, the number type translates into a text box.
Some users are.
And the user will be allowed to type junk in there, and nobody's going to care, and they're going to submit. And so even though we're using HTML5 and on all common browsers, modern browsers, it's nearly impossible, it is still a good idea in our JavaScript before you do math with it to make sure that that's a number. What if it's not? What parsing does is it keeps trying and trying and trying until it finds something that is not a number. So if I give it 1, 2, 3 Volcker, it will return 1, 2, 3. So even that's not great because it gives you something, even when there's junk in the beginning or junk at the end in this case. Right? It still gives you something. But if it's all text because they type their name in that box, the parse function will choke on it. Right? Parse analyzes it, tries to convert it. To convert a text box into a date, we have to parse it as well, or actually just translate it.
So
And what didn't this say here? Hang on a second. Doesn't tell me what happens if I try to parse and then get a value. Parse int, right? Parse int or int parse? They're already confused. Parse first, okay. So parse int Volcker times 5. 5 Volckers, that's exactly what I need. Not a number. Even though I multiply it by 5, I still get not a number. Not a number times 5 is lots of not a numbers, I guess.
What if you add 5?
Pardon me?
What if you add 5?
What if I add 5? It would probably try to concatenate.
And then it would return 5, right?
No, then it would return Volcker 5. Because this is a string, now we still parsed it. No, it'll return NaN 5. Concatenate it. Okay, because NaN, just like we saw before, was null was a string. NaN comes back as a string, and this, I'm pretty sure, is going to concatenate. Good question. So those are the kind of things you get to, that's why I don't ever get my notes done, because I have all these questions and writing tests, and does it really matter? Who would ever do something stupid like that? Lots of users. NaN 5 concatenated. It's the problem with concatenation being both the plus operator and the concatenation operator is sometimes you get unexpected results. All right, they're crawling around outside the door, so let's call it a day.